Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso, right here on S3. It's the middle of the week, Wednesday. Now, it is time to relive the horrors of our past. In 2020, as COVID-19 buckled our economy in South Africa, the Reserve Bank stepped up and dropped the prime lending rate. In short, the repo rate, from 10.25% to 7% to offer some relief for South Africans. Now, this unfortunately gave some people a false sense of security. Now, the repayment of products brought during this period has dramatically increased with the most recent repo rate change. Now, let's talk stats here for a second. If you had to buy a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house in Auckland Park in Johannesburg, you would potentially pay 2.3 million rand. Now, considering you got a 100% bond over 20 years, your repayment in July of 2020 with a 70% or 7% repo rate would just be around 17,400 rand a month. Now, fast forward to today, after the most recent repo rate increase, your monthly repayment would automatically go up to around 25,500 rand a month. Now, that's almost 8,000 rand more a month. And it's not just homes where the pinch is being felt. If you had to buy a second-hand Bucky, for instance, for 500,000 rand with no deposit, no balloon payment, and a term limit of 72 months, back in July 2020, you would have paid around 8,500 rand. But today, you would pay upwards of 9,700 rand. Now, this might not have been the case for everyone, because we all know when it comes to applying for credit, there are so many factors that come into play. But joining us to help clear things up this morning, we have CEO of Uber Home Loans, Reese Dyer, in studio. Reese, lovely to have you, my friend.
Thank you.
It is scary. It is really scary. And I mean, I remember when the prime lending rate dropped to 7%, I mean, it was great. As a homeowner myself, I saw my monthly repayments, it went down. But over the past while, we've seen it climb back up. And especially, I think I'm worried about those people that bought homes at that low rate, and now they might be feeling the pinch. But let's talk about it. How would you kind of put it into perspective, the words prime lending rate? What exactly does it mean, and how does it affect us South Africans?
So the prime lending rate is effectively the interest rate that banks lend money to you and I, to consumers, for home loans, auto loans, credit cards, etc. So how's that determined? So the Reserve Bank sets something called the repo rate, and the difference between the prime rate and the repo rate is always 3.5%. And that's how banks make their money. They borrow money from the Reserve Bank at, let's just say, 7%, and they charge us prime rate at 10.5%. Okay. So every month almost, or very regularly, the Reserve Bank sits and they set the repo rate based on a whole lot of macroeconomic factors, inflation, etc. And that moves up and down. And as repo rate moves up and down, prime rate moves by the same amount.
And this is automatically then adjusted to whatever you are paying or repaying back to the banks.
100%.
Yeah, you get those statements.
Absolutely, yeah. That's horrible statements.
And obviously, we just saw a bit of an inflation now with regards to the repo rate.
Yeah. So inflation's been coming down over the last month or two, and then suddenly we saw it kick up again last month in Feb. So we'd hoped that interest rates had sort of reached the peak, but we got a big 50 basis points increase, or 0.5% increase now in March. Yeah. And we'd hoped that was the end, but I think potentially there might be another one or two, depending on where inflation goes, which is so difficult to predict.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, like we rightly said, it's not only homeowners that's been affected by this. I mean, if you recently bought a car as well, I mean, you get the contract, that's what you're going to be borrowing at. But then now, it jumps. And it's scary because people have to fork out a lot more money.
Yeah, and it's all your debt. So it's your Truworth card, your home loan, your auto loan, your personal loan if you have one. All that's linked to prime rate. Yeah. And that'll move up and down as these interest rates have increased. So yeah, it is very scary about how much more you're having to pay than you were 18 months ago.
What do you see people are doing at this stage to kind of safeguard themselves? Are they trying to refinance, or how are they going about this particular situation? Because, I mean, let's be honest, with the prices of fuel, with food, with everything going up, what do you see from people in general? Yeah,
so where people have savings, which is obviously not all of us have that, but where they have, some of them are putting that into their home loans, and that's allowing their repayment to come down. So that obviously helps them for a period of time. And also what we do see, most home loans have got these access loans. So if you put money in, when maybe your salary goes up or interest rates come down again, you can take that money back out again and put it back into your savings. So it allows you some breathing room for a period of time while interest rates are high. What we're also seeing is customers going to banks to try and help them. So banks don't want to own homes or cars. They want to help you get through this bad time. Yeah. So go and negotiate with your bank. And there's lots of things you can do. They can drop your interest rate, make it lower. They can extend the term of the loan. So most home loans, for example, are 20 years. If you made it 25 or 30 years, your repayment goes down quite significantly. Yeah. And banks are normally very happy to do that. They can give repayment holidays. So they can say, don't pay anything for 6 months. We'll add it on at the end. So there's lots of things that you can do with your bank to try and make it better.
Because I think it's a good thing to know, because I mean, a lot of people maybe don't possess that knowledge of, okay, well, I did buy a house, I did buy a car. Oh no, but my repayment increased by $1,000 this month. I just have to take it on the chin. But there are physical steps that you can do. You just have to speak to your bank, and so you, like you rightly said, they are willing and will be willing to hopefully help out a little.
Definitely willing. As I say, they're not in the business of owning homes or cars. They want you to repay your loan, even if it means you have to pay it over a longer period.
Yeah, absolutely. The impact of the recent inflation, we spoke about that in terms of how it really affected a lot of people. And you said that there might be another one on the cards.
Yeah.
What is this due to? I mean, in layman's terms, because we as citizens and, owing money to the bank, we just see it going up, but we don't necessarily understand why.
Sure. So Reserve Bank, they have what they call an inflation mandate. So that what they say is they want to try and keep inflation between 3% and 6%. That's what they're trying to achieve. And interest rates are the best way to affect that. So if inflation's now at 7%, they want to try and bring it down to within 3 to 6. And the best way for them to do that is to keep increasing interest rates, which normally slows the economy down, and that will start then bringing inflation rates down. So it's all about inflation. And inflation is largely out of our control because most of it's imported. So oil prices, we've got no control over. Exchange rate, where we import food, etc., we have very little control over. So it's very difficult to understand. Also, we've got load shedding issues which drive inflation up. Yeah. So there's a lot of those things at play that the consumer on the street can't really control.
All right. Well, you gave us some valuable advice, Reece. Don't go anywhere. Thank you very much for joining us. If you have anything to say, maybe you want to ask something on social media with regards to the prime lending rate or the repo rate, if there's something you don't understand, connect with us on our socials and ask your questions. We'll be back with Reece in just a bit. It's my feel-good breakfast show. Welcome back to a Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso, right here on SABC3. It's a Feel Good Wednesday morning, and we are back with CEO of Uber Home Loans, Reece to talk about the most recent repo rate increase that caused quite a stir. Now, just to quickly recap, if, for instance, you bought a 2.3 million rand home in July 2020, when the repo rate was dropped to about 7% to give some South Africans some relief, you would pay around 17,417 rand. Fast forward to April this year, with the repo rate increase, it would be 25,523 rand, around about there. But it's also in the event of you buying a car. If you bought a second-hand car, second-hand bakkie, for whatever the case may be, for 500,000 rand, no deposit, no balloon payment, over a term of 72 months. In July 2020, when it was 7%, you would pay approximately 8,584 rand. And then fast forward again to this year with the increases, we're sitting at 12.5%. It would now be approximately 9,780 rand. So as you can see, largely affecting our financial situations. Reece, thank you very much for joining us, my friend. And this is scary. This is, it almost kind of, you don't want to enter into any of these agreements because it is difficult. And we spoke about it off air. A lot of first-time home buyers went in, the lending rate was so low, they bought bigger houses they could afford, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I mean, this increase, 4.25% from 7 to 11.25 in 18 months. It's one of the quickest increases we've seen, historically, and it's really hurting. So I think where banks lended quite well, though, is what they did is, to calculate how much you can afford on your home loan. They take your salary, less your tax, less your costs, and whatever's left over, whatever your free cash is, that's how much you can afford. So if at an interest rate of 7% you could afford 7,000, instead of qualifying you on the 7,000, they qualified you on, say, 10,000. So they built in a bit of a buffer to make sure that if interest rates went up, you could still afford the loan. So that has helped, I think, many of our consumers. But it's tough out there, it really is. And the speed of these increases have been very significant.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, obviously, the more value, your property is, the higher that jump or the bigger that jump will be. And this is, I think, causing quite a concern for a lot of homeowners. But just to rehash, you spoke about the fact that it's not only homeowners and people that board cars out there, it affects various other sectors.
Yeah. So your store cards, if you've got a Truist card or a Macro card or whatever it is, that's going to be impacted by the interest rate. If you've got credit card debt and you haven't repaid it all by the end of the the 30 days or whatever that period is, that's going to go up. So it's everywhere. It really is. And some debt's a lot more expensive than others. So your credit card debt, that's maybe at 25%, whereas your home loan might be at 11%. So you kind of almost have to prioritize, if you're struggling, which debt to pay down first.
So what would your advice be, I think, to people who, at this particular point in time, where we are now with the current repo rate, what should they be wary of entering into a long-term commitment like this, either buying a house or a car?
Yeah. So, I mean, interestingly, where the interest rates are now, it's unlikely we're going to see very significant future increases. So I think there might be another 25 or 50 basis points increase. So if you can afford a home loan now, likelihood is that interest rates going forward will actually come down over the next 18 months to 2 years. So if you can afford it now, you're probably actually not a bad position.
Yeah.
And because demand slowed down for property, because a lot of people can't afford it, these interest rates, you can actually probably get a fairly good deal on a home now because there's a lot more supply out there and less demand people wanting to buy. So if you can afford it now, it's probably not a bad time to actually get into the market.
And also, I think also when it comes to, I know that, you at Uber with, bond applications and getting that sorted, I mean, you guys do fight for the best rate, which is great. 100%. But also for people buying cars, I mean, don't just accept the first, hey, this is what we'll give you and we'll give you prime plus 2 or 5, Don't just accept it, go back.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't... if you were flying to Joburg, you'd go and check what the cheapest flight is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing how on a home loan, which is the biggest debt of your life, people just go into their own bank and take the loan. We've got to shop around. Yeah. You've got to make sure you get the best rate.
Look, it might be, common sense for a lot of people, but when it comes to the repo rate and it changing, we talk about the basis points.
Yeah.
For people who's not familiar, we always hear it, it's going up with 0.25 basis points.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
So, I mean, a basis point, so if the interest rate's currently 11.25 and it goes up to 11.5, that's 25 basis points or 0.25%. So it's effectively, it's just a 0.25%, really. So they make it more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, it sounds quite complicated. I do know, for me, I'm a homeowner, but I bought my house 10 years ago, and I've been working hard to try and pay off that bond. But even now, I am still seeing that significant increase, even with a bit of a backup that I did make. What advice would you give homeowners at this point of view? How should they kind of just safeguard themselves a little bit with regards to their financial situation?
Yeah. So if you have got deposit, if you've got money, savings, please put it in. Try and reduce your repayment, and that will give you some leeway. You can always take it out again later when things are better. Approach your bank. That's key. They can really help you. They can can extend the term of the loan. They can give you repayment holidays. They will help you. They want to keep the loan on the books. There's other things like if you're really struggling and you can't get banks to agree, you can go and approach a debt counselor, and then you actually go into what's called a debt review process, and they actually will help restructure your loans for you. So they'll go to the banks, they'll reduce your interest rates, they'll make a repayment plan for you, they'll budget for you, and banks and anyone that you've borrowed money from actually can't then come after you for a period of time whilst you're in that debt review process. So if you're in a real struggle, that's the process to go through.
It's good to know that there's at least something that we can do. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, man.
Appreciate
Valuable advice. Again, if you have any questions and you want to connect and you want to find out anything, our WhatsApp line is there, 063 40 888 63.